Good afternoon. Allow me to begin on a personal note. It's a picture of me around the time that my grandmother was diagnosed with end-stage heart disease and sent home to die. She already had so many bypass surgeries, basically run out of plumbing at some point, confined to a wheelchair, crushing chest pain. Her life was over at age 65. Then she heard about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, one of our early lifestyle medicine pioneers, and what happened next is actually detailed in Pritikin's biography. My grandma was one of the death's door people. Frances Greger, my grandmother, arrived at one of Pritikin's early sessions in a wheelchair. Mrs. Greger had heart disease, angina, claudication, her condition so bad she could no longer walk without great pain in her chest and legs. Within 3 weeks, though, she was not only out of her wheelchair, she was walking 10 miles a day. It's a picture of my grandma at her grandson's wedding, 15 years after doctors had abandoned her to die. She was given a medical death sentence at age 65, but thanks to a healthy diet, was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet until age 96. She continued to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. That's why I went into medicine. That's why I started nutritionfacts.org. That's why I wrote that book, How Not to Die. That's why all the proceeds from all my books are all donated to charity. I just wanted to do for everyone's family what Pritikin did for my family. Years later, when Dr. D. Nordic published his landmark lifestyle heart trial proving with something called quantitative angiography that indeed heart disease could be reversed, arteries opened up, without drugs, without surgery, just a plant-based diet and lifestyle program, I assumed this was going to be the game changer. I mean, my family had seen it with their own eyes, but here it was, in black and white, published in some of the most prestigious medical journals in the world, yet nothing happened. So wait a second, if effectively the cure to our #1 killer could get lost down some rabbit hole and ignored, what else might there be in the medical literature that could help my patients, but just didn't have a corporate budget driving its promotion? Well, I made it my life's mission to find out. For those of you unfamiliar with my work, every year I read through every issue, every English language nutrition journal of the world. So busy folks like you don't have to. I then compile all the most interesting, most groundbreaking, most practical findings in new videos and articles I upload every day to my nonprofit site, nutritionfacts.org. Everything on the website is free. There are no ads, no corporate sponsorship, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything. Just put up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandma. New videos and articles nearly every day, and the latest in evidence-based nutrition. What a concept! All right, well, where did Pritikin get his evidence from? Well, a network of missionary hospitals set up throughout sub-Saharan Africa uncovered what may be one of the most important advances, medical advances, according to one of our most preeminent medical figures of the last century, Dr. Dennis Burkitt, the fact that many of our major and commonest diseases were universally rare, like heart disease, for example. The African population in Uganda, for instance, coronary artery disease was almost non-existent. So wait a second. Our #1 killer here in the UK, coronary artery disease, almost non-existent. What were they eating? Well, they were eating lots of vegetables and grains and greens, and their protein almost entirely from plant sources, and they had their cholesterol levels to prove it, very similar to what one sees in modern day plant eaters. This is about 3.9 millimoles per liter, the units used here. You said, wait a second, maybe they were just dying from something early, never lived long enough to get heart disease. No, this is age-matched heart attacks in Uganda versus St. Louis. Out of 632 autopsies in Uganda, only 1 myocardial infarction. Out of 632 age and gender match autopsies in Missouri, 136 myocardial infarctions, more than 100 times the rate of our leading killer. In fact, they were so blown away, we went back, did another 800 autopsies in Uganda. Still, Just that one small field infarct, I mean, it wasn't even the cause of death. Out of 1,427 patients, less than 1 in 1,000. Whereas here, heart disease is an epidemic. Atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, begins in childhood. By age 10, nearly all children raised in the standard Western diet already have what are called fatty streaks building up inside their arteries. The first stage of the disease, these streaks then turn into plaques in our 20s, get worse in our 30s, and then can start killing us off. In our heart, it's called a heart attack. In our brain, the same disease process can cause a stroke. So if there's anyone here this afternoon older than age 10, then the question is not whether or not to eat healthy to prevent heart disease. It's whether you want to reverse the heart disease you likely already have, whether you know it or not. But is that even possible? You know, when researchers took people with heart disease, put them on the kind of plant-based diet followed by populations that do not get epidemic heart disease, their hope was that maybe we can slow the disease down a little bit, maybe even stop it. But instead, something miraculous happened. As soon as people stopped eating artery-clogging diets, their bodies were able to start dissolving some of that plaque away, opening up arteries without drugs, without surgery, suggesting their bodies wanted to be healthy all along, but were just never given the chance. Let me share with you what's been called the best-kept secret. Oh, well, before I get to that, this remarkable improvement in blood flow to the heart muscle itself was after just 3 weeks of plant-based nutrition. Let me share with you what's been called the best-kept secret in all of medicine. The best-kept secret in medicine is that sometimes, under the right conditions, the body can heal itself. So, you know, you'll whack your shin really hard on a coffee table, get all red hot, painful, swollen, and inflamed. But would heal naturally if you just stand back and let your body work its magic. Okay, but what if you whack your shin in the same place every day? And the same, how about 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner? You never heal. You go to your doctor, you'd be like, oh, my shin hurts. Doctor would be like, no problem. Whip out their pad, write a prescription for painkillers. You're still whacking your shin 3 times a day, still really hurts like heck, but oh, it feels so much better. Those pain pills on board. Thank heaven for modern medicine. Our body wants to come back to health if we let it. But if we keep re-damaging ourselves 3 times a day, we may never heal. You know, it's like smoking. One of the most amazing things I learned in all my medical training was that within about 15 years of stopping smoking, your lung cancer risk approaches that of a lifelong non-smoker. Isn't that amazing? Your lungs can clear out all that tar, and eventually it's almost as if you never started smoking at all. And every morning of our smoking life, that healing process starts into wham! First cigarette of the day. Re-injuring our lungs with every puff, just like we can re-injure our arteries with every bite. When all we had to do all along, the miracle cure, is to just stand back, get out of the way, stop re-injuring ourselves, and let our body's natural healing processes bring us back towards health. The human body is a self-healing machine. Sure, you can choose moderation, hit yourself with a smaller hammer, but why beat yourself up at all? This is nothing new. American Heart Journal, 1977. This is actually a case from here. See? Let's see that coming again. Where's that? Here in country. Cases like Mr. FW here, heart disease so bad, couldn't even make it to the mailbox. Started eating healthier. A few months later, he was climbing mountains, no pain. All right, that's the way we like to see it. Now, there are these new classes of anti-angina drugs on the market now. In the States, patients have to pay thousands of dollars a year to get them. But hey, at least at the highest dose, may be able to extend exercise duration as long as 33.5 seconds. I don't think many going the drug route are going to be climbing climbing mountains anytime soon. See, plant-based diets aren't just safer and cheaper, they can work better because you're treating the underlying cause of the disease, which is the #1 cause of death in the United Kingdom. Now, normally at this point, I'd go on to killer number 2 and talk about the role diet may play in preventing, arresting, or reversing each of our top 15 killers, whichever country I happen to be speaking in. But in a certain sense, like, what more do you need to know? I mean, there's only one diet ever been proven to reverse heart disease in the majority of patients, a plant-based diet. So anytime someone tries to sell you on some new diet they heard about, do me a favor. Ask one simple question. Wait a second. Has this new diet been proven to reverse heart disease? The #1 reason me and all my loved ones will die? If the answer is no, why would you even consider it? If that's all a plant-based diet can do, reverse the #1 killer of men and women, shouldn't that kind of be the default diet until proven otherwise? And the fact that can also be so effective in preventing, arresting, and reversing other leading killers like type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure would seem to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming. Let me touch on those 2 conditions. I'm going to save a lot of time for questions here. We've known since the 1930s that you take a group of diabetics, put them on a plant-based diet, and over a period of 5 years, a quarter of them were able to get off their insulin altogether. But yeah, plant-based diets tend to be relatively low-calorie diets. So maybe their diabetes just got better because they lost so much weight. To tease that out, what you'd have to do is put people on a healthy diet, but force them to eat so much food that they don't lose any weight. Then you can see if there's some unique benefits to plant-based eating beyond just all the easy weight loss. Well, we'd have to wait a few decades, but here it is. Subjects were weighed every day. If they started to lose weight, they were made to eat more food. In fact, so much more food, some of the participants had problems eating it all. They're like, oh, not another salad. But eventually they adapted. So no weight loss, despite restricting meat, eggs, dairy, and junk. Okay, so with 0 weight loss, was there any benefit to their diabetes? Well, insulin needs were cut 60% across the board. Half the diabetics ended off all their insulin altogether. Wow. How many years did that take? No. 16 days. 16 days later. So we're talking diabetics who've had diabetes for as long as 20 years, injecting 20 units of insulin a day, then 13 days later on none. Diabetes for 20 years, then off all insulin in less than 2 weeks. Diabetes for 20 years because no one had told them about a plant-based diet. For decades, they were just 13 days away at any time from being free. Here's participant number 15, 32 units of insulin on the control diet, and then 18 days later on none. Lower blood sugars on 32 units, less insulin. That's the power of plants. And remember, this was with 0 weight loss. His body just started working that much better when provided with the proper fuel. What are the side effects? Oh, how about cholesterol levels dropping like a rock to under 3.9? Again, in just a matter of weeks, making it essentially heart attack proof too, just as a bonus. So, just like asking our patients to make moderate changes in diet will only net you moderate benefits in terms of cholesterol reduction, how moderate do you want your diabetes? Everything in moderation is a truer statement than many people realize. Asking our diabetic patients to make moderate changes in diet can leave them with moderate blindness, moderate kidney failure, moderate amputation, maybe just a few toes or something. Moderation in all things is not necessarily a good thing. There's this famous study published in a journal called Cell Metabolism, which purported to show that diets high in meat, eggs, and dairy could be harmful to health as smoking, suggesting those in middle age who eat a lot of meat, eggs, dairy 4 times as likely to die from cancer or diabetes. That was true for cancer, but if you look at the actual study, those who ate lots of animal protein in middle age didn't have 4 times the risk of dying from diabetes. They had 73 times the risk of dying from diabetes. Now, those that chose moderation only eating a moderate amount of animal protein, oh, they just had 23 times the risk of death from diabetes. The academic institution where this study was done sent out a press release with a memorable opening line. That chicken wing you're eating could be as deadly as a cigarette. It's like, look, quadrupling one's risk of dying from cancer, that's comparable to what one might get smoking cigarettes. So what was the reaction in the scientific community to this revelation that diets high in meat, eggs, and dairy can be harmful to the health of smoking? Well, one nutrition scientist said it's potentially dangerous to tell people about this study. Why? Because, hey, a smoker might think, hey, why bother quitting smoking? My ham and cheese sandwiches, this is bad for me. So let's start telling one about this whole meat and dairy. That reminds me of this famous Philip Morris cigarette ad that tried to downplay the risk by saying, hey, you think secondhand smoke is bad, increasing the risk of lung cancer 19%. Well, hey, drinking 1 or 2 glasses of milk every day maybe 3 times bad, 62% increased risk of lung cancer. Or doubling your risk frequently cooking with oil, tripling your risk of heart disease by eating non-vegetarian, multiplying your risk 6-fold if you eat lots of meat and dairy. So they conclude, let's keep some perspective here. The risk from secondhand smoke may be well below that of other everyday activities, so breathe deep. That's like saying, yeah, don't worry about getting stabbed, because getting shot was so much worse. How about neither? 2 risks don't make a right. Of course, you'll know Philip Morris stopped throwing dairy under the bus once they purchased Kraft Foods. Just saying. All right, and then let me touch on high blood pressure. In the States, we're talking 78 million adults affected. So and this happens to be the case here in the UK as well, by age 60, most of us are actually hypertensive, have high blood pressure. So wait a second, if most of us become hypertensive when we go to older, maybe it's less a disease, more just a natural, inevitable consequence of aging. No, we've known since the 1920s that high blood pressure need not occur. Blood pressure is measured of 1,000 people living in rural Kenya. A typical Kenyan diet, something like this, a lot of beans and greens and corn, vegetables. Our pressures go up as we age, such that by age 60, most of us have high blood pressure. Their pressures go down, and the lower the better. We now have evidence that even people under 120 over 80 may benefit from blood pressure reduction. So the ideal blood pressure, the no benefit from reducing it further blood pressure, 110 over 70. Is it even possible to get pressures down under 110 over 70? It's not just possible, it's normal for those living healthy enough lives. 2 years in this rural Kenyan hospital, 1,800 patients were admitted. How many cases of high blood pressure did they find? 0. They must have low rates of heart disease, right? No, they had no rates of heart disease, not a single case of arteriosclerosis, and then 1 killer was found. Rural China, same thing. 110 over 70 their entire life. 70-year-olds, the same blood pressure as 16-year-olds. Wait a second. African diet, Asian diet, vastly different diets. What they shared in common is that they were plant-based, day to day, with meat only eaten on special occasions. So wait a second. Why do we think it's the plant-based nature of their diet that was so protective? Because in the Western world, the only group of folks getting it down that low on average were those eating strictly plant-based diets, coming in at an average of 110 over 65. This is the largest study of plant-based eaters to date. It's the Adventist 2 study, looking at 89,000 Californians, comparing non-vegetarians, so-called semi-vegetarians or flexitarians, those who eat meat a few times a month but otherwise not, compared to those who eat no meat except fish, compared to those who eat no meat period, compared to those who eat no meat, eggs, or dairy. And this was an Adventist study, so even the non-vegetarians didn't eat a lot of meat compared to the general population. Exercised, tended not to smoke, ate a lot of fruits and vegetables. A really healthy cohort of meat eaters, but still See the stepwise drop in high blood pressure rates the more and more plant-based people tend to eat. Same thing with diabetes, same thing with obesity. Right, okay, so sure you can throw the vast majority of your risk out the window by eating strictly plant-based, but it's not all or nothing. It's not black or white. Any movement we can make along the spectrum towards eating healthier can accrue significant benefit. You can show this experimentally. You take vegetarians, you give them meat, pay them enough to eat it, and their pressures go up. Or you take people who already eat meat, remove meat from the diet, their pressures go down within 7 days. And this is after the vast majority had to stop their blood pressure medications or reduce their blood pressure medications. They had to. I mean, you can't have normal blood pressures on multiple blood pressure drugs or drop blood pressures too low, right? You get dizzy all over, hurt yourself. So lower pressures on fewer drugs within 7 days. That's the power of plants. So, does the American Heart Association recommend a no-meat diet? No, they recommend this low-meat diet, the so-called DASH diet. So wait a second. When this whole DASH diet thing was being created, were they just not aware of this landmark research performed by Harvard's Frank Sachs? No, they were aware. The chair of the design committee that came up with the DASH diet was Frank Sachs. See, the DASH diet was created with the number one goal of capturing the blood pressure and lowering benefits of a more vegetarian diet, yet contain enough animal products to make it palatable to the general population. They didn't think the public could handle the truth. I mean, you can see what they were thinking, right? Just like drugs never work unless you actually take them, diets never work at all unless you actually eat them. So like, look, we can't tell everyone to eat strictly plant-based. How many people are going to do that? Okay, but if we soft pedal the message, come up with some kind of compromise diet, well then on a population scale, we'll do more good. Okay. Tell that to the 1,000 American families a day that lose a loved one to high blood pressure. Maybe it's time to start telling the public the truth, which is that most deaths are preventable and related to nutrition. In the States, according to the Global Burden of Disease Study, the largest study of disease risk factors in history, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, number one cause of death in the United States is American diet. Number one cause of disability, the American diet. Now bumping tobacco smoking to number 2, cigarettes, only killing about 500,000 Americans worse than diet, killing many, many more. See, yeah, but come on, everybody knows how miserably Americans eat. Well, guess what? According to the Global Burden of Disease Study, the number one killer in this country is the British diet. Tobacco smoking bumped down to number 2. So wait a second. If most deaths are preventable related to nutrition, it's the leading cause of death and disability, then obviously nutrition is the number one thing taught in medical school, right? I mean, obviously it's the number one thing your GP talks to you about at every single visit, right? How could there be this disconnect between the science and the practice of medicine? Well, let's do a thought experiment. Imagine yourself a smoker back in the 1950s. You know, back in the 50s, the average per capita cigarette consumption, at least over in the States, 4,000 cigarettes a year. So we're talking about half a pack a day. Average person walking around smoking half a pack a day. Well, the media was telling people to smoke. Famous athletes agreed. Even Santa Claus wanted you to smoke. I mean, hey, look, you want to stay slender and keep fit, so you make sure to smoke and eat lots of hot dogs to stay trim, and eat lots of sugar to stay slim and trim. A lot better than that apple there. I mean, sheesh, right? Though apples do connote goodness and freshness, reads one internal tobacco industry memo, which brings up many possibilities for a youth, or they want to make apple-flavored cigarettes for kids. Shameless. For digestion's sake, you should smoke. I mean, no curative powers claimed by Philip Morris, but hey, better be safe than sorry. And smoke. Blow in her face and she'll follow you anywhere. No woman ever says no, there's a round so firm, so fully packed. After all, John Wayne smoked them until he got lung cancer and died. You know, back then, even the paleo folks were smoking. And so were the doctors. Now, this is not to say there wasn't controversy within the medical profession at the time. Sure, you know, some doctors smoked Camels, but others preferred Lucky, so there was a little disagreement there. The leader of the U.S. Senate agreed. Who wouldn't want to give their throat a vacation? Not a single case of throat irritation. How could there be when cigarettes are just as pure as the water you drink? But don't worry. Your throat gets a little irritated, your doctor can always write you a prescription for cigarettes. This is in the Journal of the American Medical Association. So when the AMA is on record saying smoking on balance is good for you, not just neutral, but actually good for you, where could you turn back then if you just wanted the facts? What's the new data advanced by science? Well, she was too tired for fun, and then she smoked a Camel. Babe Ruth spoke of proof positive medical science, that is when he still could speak, before he died of throat cancer. You know, by some miracle back then, there was some kind of smokingfacts.org website that could deliver the science directly, bypassing commercially corruptible institutional filters. You would have become aware of studies like this. There's an Adventist study out of California, published in 1958, showing that non-smokers had at least 90% lower lung cancer than smokers. But this wasn't the first. When famed surgeon Michael DeBakey was asked why studies back in the 30s linking lung cancer and smoking were simply ignored off the face of the earth, he had to remind people what it was like back then. We were a smoking society. It was in the movies, on airplanes. Medical meetings were one heavy haze of smoke. Smoke was, in a word, normal. Okay, so back to our thought experiment. If you're a smoker in the 50s in the know, what do you do? I mean, with access to the science, you realize that the best available balance of evidence suggests your smoking habit not so good for you. So do you change, or do you wait? If you wait until your doctor tells you between puffs to quit, you could have cancer by then. You wait until the powers that be officially recognize it, like the Surgeon General did in the subsequent decade, you could be dead by then. It took more than 7,000 studies in the death of countless smokers before the first Surgeon General's report against smoking came out. You'd think maybe after the first 6,000 studies could give you a little heads up or something. Powerful industry. Right? Maybe we should have stopped smoking after the 700th study like this. So on one hand, in the 1950s, you had all of society, the government, the medical profession itself telling you to smoke. And on the other hand, all you had was the science. If you're even aware of studies like this. Well, fast forward about 60 years or so, there's a new Adventist study out of California warning Americans about something else they may be putting in their mouths. And of course, it's not just one study, put all the studies together. And incidence of many of our dreaded diseases significantly lower, including all-cause mortality in those eating more plant-based diets. So instead of someone going along with smoking habits back in the 50s, imagine you, someone you know, going along with our eating habits today. Same question. What do you do? I mean, with access to the science, you realize that the best available balance of evidence suggests eating habits are not so good for you. So do you change, or do you wait? If you wait until your doctor tells you between bites to change, it'll be too late. In fact, even after the Surgeon General's report came out, the American Medical Association officially refused to endorse it. Why? Couldn't have been because they were just handed a $10 million check from the tobacco industry? Maybe. Okay, so we can see why the tobacco industry was the AMA was touting the tobacco industry. But why were more individual doctors speaking up? There were a few ahead of their time, speaking up against industries killing millions, but why not more? Maybe it's because the majority of physicians themselves smoke cigarettes. Right? Just like the majority of physicians today continue to eat foods that are contributing to our epidemics of dietary disease. What was the AMA's rallying cry back then? Everything in moderation. Extensive scientific studies have proven smoking in moderation. Oh, that's fine. Sound familiar? You know, the food industry uses those same tobacco industry tactics, twisting the science, misinformation. The same scientists for hire paid to downplay the risks of secondhand smoke and toxic chemicals are the same paid for by the National Confectioners Association to downplay the risks of candy, and the same paid for by the meat industry to downplay the risks of meat. Whereas processed foods and animal foods are wiping out at least 14 million people every year around the world. So those of us involved in this evidence-based nutrition revolution, talking about 14 million lives in the balance. Maybe plant-based nutrition should be considered kind of the nutritional equivalent of quitting smoking. How long do we have to wait, though, before our public health authorities say, don't wait for open heart surgery, before starting to eat healthier as well? Until the system changes, we need to take personal responsibility for our own health, for our family's health. We can't wait until society catches up to the science again, because it's a matter of life and death. In a few years, Dr. Kim Williams became president of the American College of Cardiology. He was asked in an interview why he himself follows the same diet recommended, but they recommends to all his patients strictly plant-based diet. I don't mind dying, Dr. Williams replied. I just don't want it to be my own fault. Thank you so much, everyone.